On the bustling streets of a city that never sleeps, people often noticed an elderly man with a haggard appearance. He wore tattered clothes, worn-out shoes, and an old hat that barely covered his disheveled gray hair. Passers-by occasionally glanced at him with pity or disdain, but no one ever stopped to ask about his life. On the outside, he was just another old beggar. Yet, hidden beneath that facade was a truth that would surprise everyone. He was Joseph Sinclair, a reclusive millionaire. Joseph was no ordinary man. He had once made a name for himself in the business world with his sharp mind and unparalleled vision. His wealth was immense, enough to buy an entire street or even the entire city if he wished. He owned luxurious mansions, extravagant cars, and a lifestyle that many could only dream of. But deep inside, Joseph had never felt at peace. All that wealth was to him an empty shell. As the years went by, Joseph began to feel the heavy burden of loneliness. He had no wife, no children, no family. Each evening, when he returned to his vast mansion, he would sit silently in a vacant room, staring into the emptiness and the hollow feeling that nothing could fill. Money can buy many things, but it can't buy the meaning of life, he often thought. Then, one day, everything changed. Joseph received devastating news from his doctor. "Your body is deteriorating. Without treatment, you only have a few months to live," the doctor said, his eyes filled with concern. But Joseph, with a calm demeanor, merely nodded. He was used to facing challenges, and this time was no different. Treatment might buy him a few more months or years, but he saw no reason to live a meaningless life. On his way home that day, Joseph made a bold decision. He wouldn't spend his remaining days battling illness. Instead, he would embark on a different journey, a journey to rediscover the meaning of life. "If this is to be my final act, it must be a meaningful one," he told himself. This thought led him to a most unusual plan: to disguise himself as a beggar, leave behind his life of luxury, and live among ordinary people to find someone worthy of inheriting his fortune. From that moment, Joseph began his preparations. He donned tattered clothes, stepping out of his opulent mansion to blend into the crowd. With every step, he felt a mix of fear and excitement. He had no idea what awaited him, but he knew one thing for certain. If this was to be his last journey, it had to be the most remarkable one of his life. In the first few days of his disguise as a beggar, Joseph stepped into a completely unfamiliar world. He felt the stark loneliness and cold indifference of the people around him on the bustling city streets. The streets he used to traverse in luxury cars now seemed alien as he walked on aching feet. People passed him by without a second glance. Even when he extended his hand for a few spare coins, most responded with cold stares or disdainful looks. Some even hurled harsh words, making him acutely aware of the harshness of a life he had never experienced before. Joseph sat hunched on the sidewalk, his calloused hands trembling from the cold. He wondered to himself, "Is there truly anyone kind enough to care about me without regard for my wealth or status? Is there anyone compassionate enough to help a stranger without expecting anything in return?" The question echoed in his mind like a cruel lesson that life was teaching him. One night, a torrential rainstorm swept through the city, accompanied by howling winds that seemed to tear apart everything in their path. Joseph shivered as he sought shelter under a small awning. The fever caused by his illness was weakening him further. He huddled against the wall, wrapping his arms tightly around his body in a desperate attempt to stay warm. The rain poured relentlessly, soaking the streets with icy water. Through the sound of rain and wind, he heard voices approaching. A group of young men was laughing boisterously as they walked closer. At first, they seemed jovial, but as their eyes landed on Joseph, their laughter took on a cruel tone. One of them sneered, "This old man looks pathetic. Aren't you ashamed of yourself, sitting there like that?" The mocking voice cut through the rain, making Joseph lower his head even further. He tried to remain calm and replied gently, "I'm just trying to survive." But his response didn't deter them. One of the young men shoved Joseph hard, sending him tumbling to the wet ground. Their laughter echoed, mingling with the sound of the storm. Joseph lay on the cold pavement, his frail body aching with pain and his heart heavy with despair. He closed his eyes, thinking he would be left alone in the storm. But suddenly, a child's voice rang out, "Stop it, what are you doing to him?" A young boy no older than 10 ran toward them, his eyes blazing with anger. He yelled, "He hasn't done anything wrong, leave him alone." The boy's name was Aiden, a homeless child with eyes that shone with kindness and empathy. Though small and frail, he stood protectively in front of Joseph, determined to shield him. The group of young men, perhaps embarrassed by their actions, eventually left, leaving Joseph and Aiden in the rain. The boy bent down and helped Joseph to his feet with his small but strong hands. "Dad, are you okay?" the boy suddenly asked. Joseph froze. "Dad?" he stammered, his voice tinged with disbelief. Aiden nodded, his eyes glistening with trust and hope. "Mom said you're special, and I finally found you," the boy replied. Aiden led Joseph to a small rundown shack where they could stay dry for the night. As they entered, a middle-aged woman appeared, her eyes widening in shock when she saw Joseph. "Joseph? Is it really you?" she exclaimed. It was Lillian, a woman Joseph had loved deeply many years ago. They sat down together, and the story Lillian shared gradually unfolded. Lillian revealed that Aiden was, in fact, Joseph's son. But the surprises didn't end there. She also revealed that Aiden had a twin sister named Ilya. Due to her dire circumstances, Lillian had been forced to give Ilya up for adoption. Joseph was overwhelmed with both joy and disbelief. He had never known he had children, and now he had to grapple with this life-changing truth. Determined not to waste another moment, Joseph immediately began searching for Ilya. The search spanned weeks, filled with challenges and heartbreak. Finally, they discovered that Ilya was in a hospital in Spain, critically ill. Without hesitation, Joseph used all his resources to arrange a flight to bring Ilya to the United States for treatment. When Ilya arrived, the doctors delivered sobering news. Both Aiden and Ilya required bone marrow transplants to survive. Without a second thought, Joseph volunteered to donate, fully aware of the risks to his own health. As he lay on the operating table, feeling his strength ebb away, he thought to himself, "If this is the way to reunite my family, I will not regret it." The surgery lasted for hours. Outside, Lillian and the doctors waited anxiously. When the lead surgeon finally emerged with a faint smile, Lillian burst into tears of relief. Both Aiden and Ilya were stable. Though Joseph was weakened, he managed a small, satisfied smile. He had not only found his family, but also rediscovered the true meaning of life. Joseph's story is a testament to the power of compassion and the boundless love of family. From a lonely millionaire, he transformed his final days into a meaningful journey, leaving behind not just wealth, but a legacy of love and sacrifice. The surgery was a success. In the quiet hospital room, the warm morning light filtered through the curtains, softly illuminating Joseph's weary but radiant face. His two children, Aiden and Ilya, were now safe and recovering day by day. Though Joseph's health had visibly weakened after donating his bone marrow, he experienced a happiness unlike anything he had ever known. It wasn't the happiness that came from wealth, possessions, or career success. It was the profound joy of family love, something he had yearned for during his long years of solitude. Ilya, the little girl Joseph had only just met, had quickly become an inseparable part of his heart. With the consent of her adoptive mother, Ilya was allowed to stay close to Joseph and Lillian to build a real family together. One afternoon, as Joseph rested on his hospital bed, Ilya approached him, held his hand tightly, and said, "I'm proud of you, Dad." Her bright eyes reflected genuine love and trust. Those simple words warmed Joseph's heart more deeply than anything else ever could. When Joseph was discharged from the hospital, he stood at the entrance, watching Aiden and Ilya run and play joyfully. Beside him were Lillian and Ilya's adoptive mother, a woman who had spent her life loving and raising Ilya as her own. In that moment, they all felt united as one. Joseph softly said, "Together, we'll build a better future." His words were not just a promise, but a strong belief that this newly reunited family would grow closer and stronger over time. In the days that followed, Joseph spent every moment nurturing and teaching his children. He shared stories about his life, the mistakes, the successes, and the regrets. He wanted Aiden and Ilya to understand that the true value of life wasn't in wealth, but in love, compassion, and connection with others. Ilya gradually found a balance between her relationship with her new family and her adoptive mother. Her adoptive mother also decided to move closer to Joseph to ensure Ilya could enjoy the love of both families. "We don't have to choose who is family because we are all family," she said during a small family gathering, leaving everyone deeply moved. Aiden, the boy who had once roamed the streets alone, now had a real home. He no longer worried about hunger or cold. Instead, his days were filled with joy and warmth alongside his parents and sister. From a homeless child with resilient eyes, Aiden grew into a compassionate young man, always ready to help those in need. Joseph, though his health would never fully recover, poured all his remaining energy into giving his children the best life possible. He realized that his final journey, from disguising himself as a beggar to find an heir to rediscovering his family and sacrificing for them, had taught him the true meaning of life. It wasn't about leaving behind a vast fortune, but about leaving behind love, connections, and priceless lessons. Joseph's story is a powerful testament to the strength of family love and sacrifice. He not only found heirs for his fortune, but also rediscovered himself. From a lonely millionaire, Joseph transformed the final years of his life into a journey of profound purpose. He gave everything he had, not just to save his children's lives, but to build a legacy far greater than material wealth. As Joseph's life neared its end, he no longer felt regret or emptiness. He was proud of what he had accomplished, finding his family, discovering the meaning of love, and creating a hopeful future for those he cared about most. Ilya and Aiden were not only his children, but symbols of rebirth and the goodness he had brought into the world. If there's one great lesson from Joseph's life, it's this: it's never too late to change, to love, and to find life's true meaning. Cherish what you have, for love and family are the most valuable treasures no amount of money can ever replace. The story of Joseph, Aiden, and Ilya is a testament to the power of love, kindness, and sacrifice. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on its message and share it with those around you. Life's greatest lessons often come not from wealth or success, but from connection and genuine compassion. Don't forget to hit subscribe to the Life Stories 365 channel to continue joining us on a journey of discovering inspiring and meaningful stories. Each video is a new adventure, offering fresh perspectives on life and helping you find peace and motivation within yourself. Click the notification bell to never miss a story, as each one carries a profound message that might just change the way you see the world. At Life Stories 365, we are committed to bringing you content that is authentic, relatable, and of the highest quality. Together, let's continue spreading positivity, creating motivation, and inspiring a better world. See you in the next story on Life Stories 365.